Welcome to this ToolHound Learning Center video on keeping track of tools and equipment that are off-site for repair to avoid shortages and minimize delays. For the setup, first add an employer and personnel. You can then optionally add a custom inventory status, transaction types, and a return status with the assistance of the support department. The day-to-day workflow of issuing and returning items applies with or without the service module and with or without expected completion dates. And then you follow up and stay on top of these items by printing reports and following up by email. We are using personnel because they can access multiple stocking points where a non-stocking location can only access the stocking point immediately above it in the location hierarchy. Create an employer called repairs or something similar that will group all the different places where the inventory will be sent. Create a personnel record for each company or service center where the items will be sent, linked to the repairs employer. These can be the same as any vendors used on work orders if you're using the service module. Be sure to enter an email address to make follow-up easier. Create a duplicate of the issued inventory status called Out for Repair. Contact support for assistance with this step. Create a duplicate of the issued transaction type called Out for Repair using the newly created inventory status Out for Repair. Contact support for assistance with this step. Set the order to 8 or 9 so that it appears at the bottom of the transaction type list when creating transactions. This helps avoid using the incorrect transaction type for normal day-to-day transactions. Create a duplicate of the return transaction type called Return from Repair. Set the order to 9. Now let's look at the day-to-day workflow and 3 different scenarios. Issue inventory going off-site for repair to the appropriate personnel ID. This is the absolute minimum. You can then optionally use the Out for Repair transaction type for clarity. If you have an estimated completion date or a standard turnaround time to repair the item, enter this as the due date. We'll start with the most basic example. We're sending an item out for an emergency repair to HWJ Calibrations, and we'll use the transaction type Out for Repair. And we expect the turnaround time to be fairly quick, so we'll enter in the return date. We'll scan in the item ID for our chainsaw, and we'll put in a description of the problem in the notes. We're then going to print the transaction receipt to act as a waybill to send along with the item since we don't have the service module. Looking at the transaction receipt, we have all the information there, and we can package up the chainsaw to go to the vendor. When we look up the chainsaw, we not only see that it's not in stock, but we know exactly why it's not in stock, and the current entity shows us where it is. It's common to have a batch of tools or equipment serviced at one time. You might have a vendor come on site, or it might be done by your maintenance department. Either way, you want to know that those are unavailable. In this case, the service is being done in-house. We'll use the Out for Repair transaction type, and we'll scan in a batch of fire extinguishers. In the notes, we'll put in the reason for the service, and then we'll save the transaction. We don't need a transaction receipt in this case. When we look up one of the fire extinguishers, we see that our inventory is accurate, and we know why the fire extinguisher is unavailable. If you're using the service module and have a work order prepared, that doesn't tell you where the inventory is while it's being serviced. We're going to issue the scissor lift using our custom transaction type to keep track of it. If the work order is already approved and charge issues to work order is enabled for the settings for this stocking location, we can link the work order to the transaction. We can print the transaction receipt, but in this case it makes more sense to print the work order. When inventory comes back from service, it's the same process but in reverse. All you have to do is select the Return from Repair transaction type and return the inventory as usual. When you look up the inventory, it's back in stock as expected. Looking at the transaction history, you can see exactly what happened with the asset. Now let's look at following up to ensure the inventory is returned within a reasonable delay. Report on all inventory out for service or repair by using the issued assets email and filter by the employer. You could save the advanced filter for the employer to reuse next time, or you could schedule this report to show up in your inbox. You can report on individual vendors by using the personnel filters. You can use the issued assets email to email vendors directly, provided you enter the email address on the personnel record. This will automatically include a list of the inventory sent out to the vendor in the body of the email. All you have to do is put a personalized message. You can filter by the repair vendor, each vendor separately, or only overdue items. Let's review what we've learned so far. Add an employer called repair or repairs to group all the different personnel you'll create to represent all the different repair houses, third-party vendors. Contact our support team if you wish to create custom transaction types and inventory statuses. These are very delicate operations that can impact your inventory. Issue and return the inventory to the different personnel you've created, and optionally use the transaction types that you created as well. Provided you remembered to add the email addresses to the personnel, you can use the issued assets email to send reminders to the vendors, and you can report using the issued assets filtering for either the repair employer or for any of the specific personnel records you created. Remember, you can always schedule this report as well. Thanks for watching this video from the ToolHound Learning Center. For any questions, contact our support team. And remember, subscribe and hit the notification bell.